July 8th, 1898, Skagway, Alaska. A gold rush town where people lose fortunes faster than they can pull off their gloves. That night, on the wooden planks of Juneau Wharf, shots will ring out, and the man the whole town feared will fall. His name was Soapy Smith. But there's a catch. The man who stopped him, Frank Reid, won't survive either. He'll die later, slowly, from a wound that at first didn't look fatal. And if you think this is just a duel between two men, no. This is the ending of a major scam. A story about a sack of gold that set off a chain reaction and ended an era. So make sure you watch to the end, because the main question here isn't who fired, it's why those shots were even possible. Skagway in 1898 isn't just a town, it's the gateway to the Klondike. Every ship unloads a new wave of people with that same light in their eyes. They bring money, gold, and the belief that luck is waiting for them up the trail. They also bring something even more valuable, naivety. And where naivety appears, someone always shows up who knows how to turn it into profit. That's how a king rises in Skagway. Jefferson Randolph Smith. To everyone, Soapy. His empire looks respectable from the outside. A saloon, a parlor, a sign in the window, a friendly smile. But inside, one con stacked on top of another. Fraud here isn't an episode. Fraud here is the economy. Newcomers are greeted by helpful guys. They'll tell you where to buy supplies, where to sleep, where to exchange money cheap, where to play a fair game, to multiply your stake before the journey. And anyone who walks through the wrong door walks out without a dream, and without their money. That's how Skagway lives for months, on fear, on rumors, on half-truths, and on silence, because complaining feels pointless. But in the summer of 1898, something happens that Soapy hates most. The victim refuses to stay quiet. That day, a miner returns to town, John Douglas Stewart. He doesn't look like a tourist who just stepped off the ship. He's seen the Klondike. He knows what real work feels like. And he has something Skagway can sense from a distance. A sack of gold, they say $2,600 worth, plus cash. In 1898, that's enormous money. Stewart makes a smart move. He locks the gold in a store safe. But Skagway is the kind of place where a smart move doesn't guarantee safety. Because safety here is something you buy. And the man selling it is Soapy. Sometime that morning, before noon, friendly men approach Stewart, normal, smiling, talking like old buddies. They say, "Come on, let's play. 3 cards, it's fair." 3-card Monte, a classic. Stewart loses a little. Then they let him win some back. So he tastes victory, so he believes. And then comes the trap line. "If you're so confident, show us you've got real stakes." And right there he makes the fatal move. He goes for the gold, not to bet it, not to hand it over, just to show it, just to show it. He comes back, pulls out the sack, and for 1 second, he relaxes. And in that second, the sack is gone. Someone grabs, someone passes it, someone blocks his path. Stewart doesn't even have time to shout. He's already being calmed down with threats. And the gold disappears into the crowd as if it never existed. In most stories, this is where it ends. The victim goes home, drinks, and keeps quiet. But Stewart does the one thing Soapy didn't expect. He raises hell. He goes to the authorities, to the sheriff, to a marshal, to anyone with a badge. And he hits a wall, because the wall is called Skagway 1898. They tell him something like, "We'll handle it, don't panic, give it time." Time passes, and the gold doesn't come back. And the longer they stall, the clearer it becomes. This wasn't a random card game. It was a system, a business, and at the top of that business, Soapy. By evening, the town is boiling. Shop owners, dock workers, merchants, anyone who's ever been robbed suddenly feels it. Enough. They form a committee, a kind of citizens' force. People who decide if the law is weak, they'll be the law. Soapy responds immediately. He gathers his own men, because for him, this isn't just conflict, it's a challenge to his rule. Now Skagway has two sides, a spark, gunpowder, and it only takes one careless move. Evening of July 8th, a big meeting is planned. A gathering where people will finally say out loud, "We're done." They choose a place that's symbolic and practical, Juneau Wharf, a long wooden pier reaching out into the water. Easy to control, one entrance, a narrow walkway. If something goes wrong, the crowd is behind you, and the threat is ahead. They post men at the entrance to keep troublemakers out. Among them, Reid. Who is he? Not a legendary sheriff, not a dime novel gunslinger, just a man standing in the right place, at the worst possible time. And then night drops over Skagway. Inside Soapy's saloon, he drinks and listens. Someone brings him news, a meeting, a crowd, angry people, and worst of all, they're ready to act. To Soapy, that's humiliation, because fear is currency. If the town stops fearing him, his empire collapses. So, he makes his choice. He goes himself. To prove he's still the owner of Skagway, he takes a Winchester, a long gun you can see from far away. Not a hidden revolver, a Winchester, pure display. And he steps into the night. Picture the scene. A dark pier, boards underfoot, cold rising off the water. Far away, noise from the meeting, and a man with a rifle on his shoulder walking straight toward the place he's not wanted. Soapy reaches the entrance. At first, he passes a few guards. Someone steps back. Someone doesn't want escalation. Someone isn't armed and does the only smart thing, doesn't play hero. And just like that, Soapy nearly reaches the end of the line. The last man. There stands Reid, and Reid says what no one in Skagway has dared to say to Soapy in a long time: "Stop, you're not going any further." And now everything compresses into seconds. One sentence, one step, one movement of a hand. Soapy isn't used to being refused. He swings the Winchester off his shoulder, maybe to smash Reid with the stock, maybe to fire point blank. Witnesses will argue about it for years, but for Reid, it doesn't matter anymore. He sees the rifle, he sees the threat, and he draws his revolver. There's one moment people always point to as fatal. The first pull, misfire, the cartridge fails. And in that instant, fate pauses, like it's asking, "Are you sure you want to continue?" Then the pause ends. Shots, 1, 2, more. On a narrow pier, it sounds muffled, like a hammer hitting wood. Smoke, shouting. Someone goes down. Reid is hit in the leg, then again, low in the abdomen, in the groin. The kind of wound that doesn't kill instantly, but almost always kills in the end. Soapy is wounded too. He staggers. He loses control of the rifle. And here comes the biggest argument in this story. Who fired the killing shot? In one version, Reid kills Soapy right there. In another, once Soapy is already down, a man from the meeting rushes in, snatches the Winchester, and finishes him with a shot to the heart. In the dark, in the chaos, among screams, it can feel like one single blast of events. But the result was clear. Soapy Smith collapses onto the boards of Juneau Wharf, and he never gets up again. the town freezes. Because now this isn't a con, not a saloon scuffle, not another miner got robbed. Now it's death. Soapy's men run toward him, but they're met by the crowd already moving back from the far end of the pier. They realize the numbers aren't on their side, and in that moment, the gang does what Soapy didn't. They retreat, they scatter, they hide, they dissolve into the night, and on the pier, 2 men remain. One dead immediately, the other still breathing. Frank Reid is carried away. They try to save him. But medical care in 1898 isn't a modern operating room. It's pain, infection, complications. Reid holds on for days, and every day is a fight. He dies on July 20th, 1898, 12 days after the shootout, which creates a brutal equation. That night, the town won, but it paid with a life. Now, let's go back to the beginning, to the sack of gold. After Soapy's death, people start digging, literally and figuratively. They search belongings, safes, back rooms, and they find Stewart's gold in Soapy's possession. Not all of it. They say a portion vanished without a trace, but the meaning is bigger than the missing amount. It proves the robbery wasn't freelance work by small-time hustlers. It was under protection, under a system, under the king. And when the gold turns up, something inside Skagway flips. People finally see proof, not rumor, not anger, a fact. And facts are what Soapy's system feared most, because as long as there's only fear, he controls everything. But when a fact appears, fear weakens. That's how Skagway begins to clean itself up. Not magically, not overnight. But this shootout becomes the turning point, the moment after which nothing is the same. Still, the story doesn't end neatly, because the hero doesn't celebrate. He dies from his wound. And now, imagine the town's psychology. They killed a tyrant, but they lost the man who stood between the crowd and chaos. And one last question remains. The question that turns this into legend. Who really killed Soapy Smith? Frank Reid, who pulled the trigger in the decisive second, or someone else who fired the last shot as Soapy was already falling? Maybe we'll never know for sure, because night, because panic, because witnesses who saw different things. But we do know this. Soapy didn't fall because of a random bullet. He fell because one day he decided, I can take anything, and nothing will happen to me. And that sack of gold became the thing that finally pushed the town to its feet, made people gather, step onto the pier, and say, enough. And when he walked down Juneau Wharf with a Winchester on his shoulder, he thought he was going there to scare them. But in reality, he was walking into his last trap.